Yeah, so I mean, fear is the key. So, fear, we know that fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger, anger leads to the dark side, right? So,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
okay. Good evening, good morning, Marijn and Joel.
Hey,
Hey guys.
it's great to
So,
be
where,
here.
Oh,
where in the world are you guys?
I am in San Diego. In
Diego.
fact, it's been raining here. It's kind of odd little weather.
Okay.
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 So is it like sunny there? Well, not because it's
Basically,
raining, but
it's
I
actually
mean,
cloudy. It's an unusual day.
yeah, but it's not like I don't know what the typical San Diego weather is. Is that one of those?
Oh, typical is, if you think of perfect weather, that's here.
All
Okay.
right. Nice.
Yes,
Cool.
it's always good. There's no such thing as not good weather. So that's why it's so unusual to have a gray day in San Diego. It's like, what's
So
going on?
everyone in the world should just move to San Diego.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know about that, but
it's close to Tijuana, so
Ah,
that's
okay.
that's a benefit as well. You can
exactly.
go get cheap
I've,
Ah,
stuff in Tijuana anytime you want.
I've
all
been there
right, all
once. It was an experience.
It's
Um,
absolutely experience.
so, so Marijn, you're in Antwerp, right?
No. I'm
No?
actually in Utrecht in the Netherlands right now.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Been there a few times.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
windmills.
Yes. Exactly. And good stroopwafels as well. Everyone in the world
Yes,
loves
yes. Love the
stroopwafels.
waffles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm in cold and dark and wet Helsinki. So typical November weather.
Just typical Helsinki weather, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's November in Finnish, it's called marrasku, and it actually translates as the month of death. So,
Okay.
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So death in meaning that everything dies and the darkness sets
And
in.
everything comes back afterwards. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Wow.
Kind of makes sense. Kind of makes
Hey,
sense.
okay, enough small talk. We Finns cannot handle too much small talk. We are here to discuss
Yep.
about community building. Community building, very very cool topic. I think it's one of my favorite topics, and also how we could link community building to drive user adoption in organization. And for that, we have our honored guest Joel Olson with us today. So awesome. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Joel,
yeah.
what's your kind of main take on the importance of community, and what do you think are the main drivers of community and
Well,
how?
maybe let's start. What drove you to be part
Oh,
of the
yeah,
community or a
yeah,
community influencer?
sure.
Sure, sure. Well, in fact, I would say in an organization, when
Mhm.
you find failure, you don't find community. Like
Okay.
seriously.
Okay.
I think when you find success, you also find an organization that actually has a really, really strong community.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's that stark in contrast. Like I would challenge anybody to find a successful deployment of X product and not find community. It's interesting how success actually matches up with where there are a strong community. And what's fascinating with that is it's not, we always say, oh, it's the expertise. It's about how
Yeah.
good the team is. But you actually find that there's an element of success that is very much related to the ability for the team that's doing the deployment, and especially with SaaS technologies, where it relates to a strong community.
Mm. Wow. Very bold
And
statement.
I'll preface that with my own experience inside of
Yeah.
Microsoft when
Yeah.
I was hired way back nearly 20 years ago to roll out Tahoe and Office Web Server, the precursors to SharePoint.
Nice.
Here was this lone IT operations guy who's deploying 40 servers around the world on what would be, SharePoint,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how do I align the business with this technology? How do I educate end users? How do I help the organization adopt this service?
Mm.
So a lot of it was defining what the service offering was. A lot of it was kind of, doing typical deployment things from an IT perspective. But ultimately, when it turned from being a technology into a service offering and being one that the organization was able to adopt, it came down to building community. It ended up a lot around, how do I help people find each other? How do I help end users find the power users? How do I help the power
Yeah.
users be successful? How do I help the developers understand the service offering and what is okay, what's not okay, and champion and create these champion programs? I mean, it seems like Microsoft has really adopted this idea of champions, but
Yeah.
ultimately, what is a champion program? It's a community.
Yeah.
It's basically helping these
Exactly.
champions across the organization find each other, be successful, share the success, and success itself breeds success. So you got to find these little wins,
Yeah.
communicate those. Well, how are you communicating? Well, you've got to have some platform, and a lot of what this is all about is building a platform where you can actually communicate and actually gather feedback. I mean, this is a two-way street. That's what's great about community, is it's not just blasting out an email or just lecturing people. It's about creating this two-way street where you're on a level playing field and building a network.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, network is the key here. So it's kind of connecting people, but connecting to them to each other, but also to ideas and great content. And what I think as well is very important, that you create this culture that sharing is okay, like, or it's okay to also maybe fail or so, or to maybe not have the perfect post out there, but it's more kind of creating an environment that sharing is caring, basically. Yeah. And when I see in the organizations, that's usually quite a difficulty or a problem when, as you said, kind of the success isn't there, that everyone is scared to share.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is, I think it's fear that also breeds failure. If
Absolutely.
people don't feel comfortable with using a solution, it's under the radar, it's one that they don't sure if they're going to get in trouble using it. It's so much different when you've actually got exec sponsors and there is a community behind it. You feel comfortable, you feel safe, and it's fascinating. The technology could have lots of problems, but if the community is speaking about those problems openly and they can coach you around those problems, you can be just as successful on a worse platform because there's a strong community.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, fear is the key. So, fear, we know that fear leads to hate, hate leads to anger, anger leads to the dark side, right? So,
Yes, death and
There has
destruction.
to be
Yeah.
at least one Star Wars reference in this episode. Of course.
sorry, I'm a huge geek. I love to do those references. Yeah, absolutely. So what is kind of, I mean, what is your key of or the idea of a successful community, or I mean, what is the main driver of that, Joel? What would you think? I mean,
So let me give you a great analogy.
yeah.
And I think that what's interesting about building community and getting started with a community is you're going to feel like somebody who's dancing alone. It's like, imagine
With
there's a
tears in the
band that's
eyes.
playing. There's a band that's playing,
Exactly.
and everybody's sitting down just listening to the music.
Yeah.
It
There's
always
this
takes that
one
first
crazy
person.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, the one crazy guy who stands up and starts dancing.
Oh girl. Oh
You,
girl.
yeah, guy or girl, absolutely. But you have to be that person. You have to be willing to get up. You're so excited about the technology, you're so excited about what's happening. You have to be willing to stand up and start dancing. And before long, sometimes it's gonna feel unnatural. It's gonna feel like, is anybody going to join me? Am I really going to just be sitting on, I'm creating these these meetings, or I'm creating this opportunity to connect with people across the organization. Does anybody want to join me?
Yeah.
And it's going to feel awkward but momentum, you've got to keep doing it. It's the staying power that allows you to build this community.
Absolutely. Isn't there that song called I'm dancing with tears in my eyes? There's this type of song. There's some lyrics with that. I don't remember what it was, but it spins in my head. But it somehow feels like that when you are alone.
Yeah.
Kind of you want to do it, but it's hard. So you need to just keep on pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. So when you talk about adoption, you're talking about how to take the solution from where it is today to a better place, and how to get there. So much of it comes down to, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to stick your neck out? Hey, can we have some kind of social gathering where you can find like-minded individuals who can share? And what's interesting is here, there's many formulas for how to build a community, but ultimately it comes down to, you have challenges, other people have the same challenges.
Yeah.
How are you going to find a space where you can connect those people? They can share their challenges, and guess what? They've also got solutions.
Yeah, excellent.
And that's also why blogging took off back in the day, and why bloggers were so important. And these days it's these social media influencers. But ultimately and even podcasts, things like this, it's like the voice. How can you share your voice in your organization? How can you share these tips and tricks and best practices? And we talk about these as like, oh, you need to go to a class, but it's like, no. It's creating those little videos or a little podcast, or finding a platform where you can share your story. And that's where Office 365 has got a number of places where you can create those things and actually get some visibility around those things, and in allowing you to beat your drum. And it's about creating that consistent rhythm where people can dance.
Yeah. I mean, building community. I mean, you're traveling the world, right? I can always see your pictures with Michael Noel.
Yeah.
You kind of,
So how many countries did you visit right now?
I'm somewhere around 170 countries.
170.
Crazy.
Out of 193. So I've got
that's a lot.
Little less than 25 left.
So I guess North Korea is missing or something like that?
No, I've been to North Korea.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Iraq, Iran. I'm talking like I've actually visited communities in Kurdistan talking about SharePoint.
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
awesome.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, my question was, how do those communities differ from the different countries? I mean, I guess the core or the essence is all the same. What you said, that you want to connect people to ideas and to solutions, or if someone has challenges that they want to get something out of it. But what other differences have you witnessed or noticed in different worlds,
or the similarities maybe?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of similarities. I think it's easier to point out those similarities. I think the differences often end up being cultural.
Yeah.
But as an example, when I went to Dubai for the first time, speaking at this SharePoint event, I met this guy from Iran, and he was saying to me, "Hey, I've been working on a Persian language pack for SharePoint," and he's like, "I'm not getting any attention from the product team," and I'm like, "Well, tell me more, and do you have any public websites that I can share with them?" And he told me that he actually had 70 public websites running SharePoint in Persian using his language pack.
Wow.
And so I took his story, brought it back to Redmond. And the quick story is, he was able to actually get his company to build the next, for SharePoint 2007, it was his language pack that actually became part of the official part of the product.
Yeah.
But it was meeting in this kind of community setting, but as well, I was able to kind of keep in touch with him and understand what was actually happening with the SharePoint community in Iran. So I'm thinking, what? There's a SharePoint community in Iran? So it's fascinating to find, no, they've got 30 to 50 people. They were running SharePoint Saturdays, just like us. And
awesome.
we were able to kind of connect on Facebook and kind of them sharing their pictures of what it was like to be in the SharePoint community in
Yeah.
Iran.
Wow.
Nice.
And that's that repeats itself. Like I did a SharePoint Saturday in Cuba, and it was
I would like to
talking
go
to
there.
these guys about how they do SharePoint development in Cuba.
Mhm.
And you know, back in the day, it was like Microsoft was strictly saying MVPs cannot go to, you know, there was an MVP who lost his MVP by going to Cuba, you know, back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Wow.
Like, but there was a SharePoint community that was regularly meeting, and it's people who have the same challenges, people who have these struggles,
Yeah, of course.
who the sharing of the information elevates all of them.
Yeah.
And what's been great about what I've been able to do is kind of connecting these communities. You'll find these pockets, and then it's a lot of like, well, hey, let's connect you through Twitter, let's connect you through social media. You don't need to feel isolated. You know, your knowledge and the things that you're learning, the solutions you're building on Codeplex back in the day,
Oh.
Yeah.
you know, was let's how do we connect up and actually be greater as a global community? And often it was, hey, I'm going to a place and I'm kind of just waving my hands and kind of reaching out on social media, and I'd find somebody who'd be like, hey, we want to host you. Like back in the day, there was this guy in Jordan. I had written on my blog, hey, I want to go to the Middle East.
Mhm.
I want to either go to Petra or Jerusalem or the pyramids. And this guy from Jordan said, hey, come to Jordan. We'll take you to Petra and you can speak at our user group. And I was like, fantastic, let's do it.
Yeah.
Little did I know, he didn't even have a user group. He decided to launch it
Yeah.
with me coming. And it
Awesome.
actually worked out really well. We met at this
Perfect.
restaurant.
Yeah.
There were a dozen people who came out. And that was the birth of the community there in
Jordan
Amman,
user
Jordan.
group. Nice.
Yeah. And,
Wow.
and it doesn't end there. There was a guy from Israel who said, hey, come to Israel, come speak at our user group, and we'll take you around old Jerusalem. And I was like, oh yeah, definitely. Little did I know, I was connecting a Palestinian and a Jew on an email thread saying, hey guys, figure out my schedule for me.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
But that worked
And
out, right?
it was what was really cool was community became more important than politics, more
Awesome.
important
Yeah.
than what was happening there, because here
I
I've
love
got
this
these guys
statement.
kind of working out
Mm.
user group schedules and flight times and so on. And the community became much more important, and these guys were kind of able to overcome, not that they had any personal issues with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important, is that ability to connect people
Yeah.
with different ideas and different backgrounds, and create this platform where we can all actually have a conversation.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a debate, it's okay to have a conversation, but we need a platform, and that's what community provides, is a platform.
Sure.
Community became more important than politics. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the same we should adapt also to the organization. So if we look at the last aspect of this episode today, so how we would adopt this community thinking into organizations to drive user adoption. So would you have any like,
Absolutely. And let
Yeah.
me even tell you, there are political fiefdoms inside of organizations like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah,
There are huge walls inside of organizations,
absolutely.
as big
Yeah.
as the wall in in the Middle East, right? As big as the wall between San Diego and Tijuana. These walls need to be broken down.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is even just recently, a bunch of us guys in Southern California reached out to folks and Microsoft folks in Ensenada, and we actually organized a SharePoint Saturday in Ensenada.
Mhm.
And we actually helped them create this Office 365 user group in Baja, California.
Okay.
And so we had this birth of this new community that didn't previously exist, and it's by reaching out and crossing arms. Now you talk about that in an organization where there may be a fiefdom between HR or marketing or
Yeah.
IT and said business unit, and these walls and barriers are often artificial. You know, it's because of who the leaders are of those organizations, or it's something that happened in the past, or
Yeah.
there may even be compliance reasons why these people can't talk. But what's great is these platforms where you have a user group where it, you know, like say in a military, I've actually spoken at military communities inside of the military organization. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter that the general is there
Yeah.
and the peon, you know, private. The community flattens it out, and the private could actually be the guy who's speaking, and the generals could actually be listening and learning and growing.
So it's almost like the same effect when you're in a Finnish sauna. So when you're naked, everyone is similar.
Absolutely, absolutely. Talk about community building.
Yeah, exactly.
Strips away everything. Strips away
Exactly.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Perfect.
have to talk, of course, just a little bit about the wedding that you just had.
Yeah.
So congrats.
Yeah,
Can you
I'm super excited for Teams and SharePoint. I did have
can
this
you give a little bit
opportunity.
of background on that?
A little bit of background. I think it starts way back when Microsoft decided it was going to kill InfoPath. And with InfoPath, a lot of people were worried about what that was going to mean, because it seemed like Microsoft wasn't necessarily speaking very well to a successor product at the time. They knew they wanted to kill InfoPath. They knew that there was going to be some kind of form solution, but they weren't really speaking to what it was, and the community was really worried about it. And I was feeling that. I was feeling this concern of the community that, hey, they're killing InfoPath. It's going to die. You know, they're not doing any evolution on it. In fact, it now has an end of life story. And so I decided I'm going to have a funeral for InfoPath. And this wasn't the first product funeral I'd ever been to. When I was on Microsoft campus, they killed Palladium, like the old version of Exchange.
Yeah.
When they created the new one. You know, it was like, hey, we're going to upgrade everything. And they had this tiny little funeral for IT where they all went to this little funeral for the product that they finished upgrades, and they finished the last mailbox or whatever. And it was a little celebration. I thought, you know, I want to do this for InfoPath. I want to have a funeral where I can gather the community and we can mourn and weep about the death of InfoPath, and we can have people speak about what it means to them. We can have this
eulogies.
Let's march around the expo hall with a casket that says InfoPath on it, and to kind of represent what this means. We're mourning over this product, but at the same time, we're excited for what's next, but we feel like we don't have a good answer. And what was great was at the event itself, Microsoft was aware of our funeral, and I felt like they addressed the fact that there was a funeral happening actually in the roadmap session for InfoPath. So I felt like, you know, small success in that Microsoft was acknowledging there was a funeral. The community was able to speak, and we were able to speak. And this was not just me. You know, there were probably 50 to 100 individuals who were involved in the funeral in one way or another, with flowers and singing and dancing. And so what happened recently was I had this idea of Teams and SharePoint are going through this really interesting time.
Yeah.
Where SharePoint integration into Teams is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And I'm hearing all this weird FUD. You know, from a marketing perspective, I'm hearing people say Teams or SharePoint.
Yeah.
And it's driving me crazy. I hate it when people say Teams or SharePoint. Like it's not Teams or SharePoint.
There is
You
no
can do
Teams without
Teams.
SharePoint.
When you do Teams, you're doing SharePoint. So
Exactly.
stop it. Stop saying Teams or SharePoint. It just drives me crazy. So I was like, I want to do this thing where I can actually, Teams and SharePoint are better together. We all believe that, but there's a lot of people who just don't understand the relationship. So I'm like, I need to personify Teams and SharePoint and that relationship. I could write whatever blog I wanted, and it's not going to get as much, it's not going to make it to the end of the row. Not everybody's going to remember or know if I built a perfect blog post about the integration between Teams and SharePoint,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be as great as having a wedding from a perspective of I want to tell people these products belong together, and there's a bunch of SharePoint people, admins, developers, and so on. They themselves need to have a wake-up call, a huge wake-up call, that Teams is part of what they do.
Right.
Yeah.
Teams is very, very much in your face, connected to your day. I don't care whether in your organization even that you're not deploying Teams. Guess what? You need to understand the importance of this relationship between Teams and SharePoint. Even if in your organization, Teams is a year or two out. I don't care. You need to understand this relationship between these two products. And the wedding was very much about big, big, big wake-up call.
Really.
Teams and SharePoint are better together. These products are married.
Yeah.
Let's actually have a wedding for them.
Really.
And this was to communicate not just to the community, but to Microsoft as well. Hey, Microsoft, stop trying to do Teams events and SharePoint events and come together. And what's great is
Really cool.
Jeff Teeper announced, hey, guess what? We're inviting Teams to SPC. And I felt like, man, they're hearing this message. You guys have got to get married. You got to get attached to the hip.
Really.
And what was great about the wedding is Jeff Teeper, the VP over this stuff, he was like, and even Caruana, Lori Pottmeyer made it. You know, it got the visibility I was looking for. I wanted the product teams to understand. The community understands and celebrates these two products coming together and connecting. Understanding It's not one product, these are married products.
Awesome idea. I really wonder how the honeymoon was.
You know, no, but it was a proper wedding. There was Stacy was the priest. She was awesome. We had a wedding photographer. We had everything. We had speeches.
I love the bagpiper. That was my favorite.
The bagpiper, yes, absolutely. We also there were people crashing the wedding. That was awesome. That was just awesome. Right. Flow and power apps crashing the wedding. Guys
in fact, we even had a showing of InfoPath Zombie. So InfoPath Zombie showed up, and it bit Skype. So Skype is infected. We know that Skype for Business has a limited amount of time
left.
But I mean, this is brilliant. I mean, just as a final note, before we close this, I mean, this is exactly what this community or these cool ideas, what people keep on talking about and kind of with sticks. And this is very important for building community, that you get out there, go a bit crazy, but that's totally fine. Yeah.
Do a little dance. You know, you got to dance alone, and you wave your hands a little bit. You welcome others to join you, and before long, you've got 500 people at a wedding, at the biggest party at Ignite. I think in fact, I saw I think it was SPC Party Patrol was doing some polls around people that were at the various parties throughout the week, and the wedding, I think, got the highest ratings of the week. If it could be said, awesome. it was a primo.
Was it bigger than the red party?
The red party was definitely fantastic as well. I mean, come on, that's very much about community, right? It's like, here's a bunch of guys, and we're trying to like be a community. We're bringing the diversity and inclusion. I think definitely when you talk about the percentages and how awkward it is, I think the red party over time has been able to establish that it doesn't matter. There could be one woman with amongst 10 men. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. Like everybody can just dance and have fun.
Yeah.
And I think that this idea of there often are big groups of women dancing at the red party too. You know, it's about being inclusive. Community is about being inclusive too. You know, you start talking about adoption and all these things. It's like you may have that crazy guy or gal who has these ideas of things they want to do, but guess what? This is a platform where you want to hear everybody's ideas and be inclusive. Like absolutely, these things are important inside of the organization too. You want every department or every team to be able to have a voice and be able to help influence and know that their feedback is being heard in your adoption strategies, in your deployment of your solution.
Well, I mean, these are great closing words, Joel. Thanks a lot for your great insights on building community. Any final words for this episode?
I wanted to say to anybody who's listening, don't let the fact that you're dancing and feeling like you're alone stop you from building community inside of your organization. Absolutely, success inside your organization with your solution you're trying to deploy, with whether it's Office 365 or any solution out there. If you're trying to connect with end users and actually find success, it comes with building community. And I applaud you and encourage you to keep going. Keep up the good fight.
All right, awesome. Hey. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Greetings to San Diego, greetings to Utrecht, and be safe and take care, guys.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
See you around, man. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Good times.